Welcome to the deep dive. Ready to explore some pretty intense themes.
Definitely intense.
We're diving into a book where one of you suggested, Sayaka Murata's Earthlings. Have you read this one?
I have, yeah. It stays with you.
Buckle up then. Now, Murata also wrote Convenience Store Woman, which a lot of folks loved, but Earthlings goes to some, well, let's just say unexpected places.
Darker places, for sure.
Definitely dark. So for anyone not familiar with Earthlings, it's a Japanese novel, kind of a blend of coming of age, social commentary, and a touch of sci-fi.
It uses fiction to ask some big questions, about what it means to belong, to fit in or not fit in, societal pressures, all that.
Yeah, and the book dives right into that with this idea of the factory.
The factory.
It's a metaphor.
Yeah.
The main character, Natsuki, she sees the whole world like this giant factory, churning out people who just conform.
Or cogs in a machine.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And she's not into it, obviously. It's like she thinks society's trying to, crush any sense of individuality.
And that feeling resonates, right? I mean, think about it. Have you ever felt that pressure, that expectation to fit a certain mold, maybe in your job, your family?
Oh, absolutely. Makes you think. And the book, it really shows this through what Natsuki goes through, like starting in her childhood with these summers she spends in Akishina.
Akishina is like her escape, a rural village in the mountains. Total opposite of her regular life.
Like stepping into a different world.
Exactly. In Akishina, there are no expectations, no pressures. It's just freedom to be herself.
It's like Akishina represents pure, unadulterated existence outside the factory walls, so to speak.
Yeah.
And it's there, in Akishina, that she meets her cousin, Yu.
Yu, who Natsuki believes is an alien.
Yeah, and that really speaks volumes about how they both feel, right? Like outsiders.
Total aliens in the factory world. They connect over that, make this pact to escape together.
And their bond, it gets really intense, fueled by this feeling of not belonging, but also by some pretty traumatic stuff Natsuki goes through in her family, with this cram school teacher, Mr. Igasaki.
Those experiences are key. They shape how she sees the world, make her feel even more different, even more desperate to get away.
Right. Like the trauma validates her whole worldview, makes her think, yeah, this world is messed up, I need to escape. And that leads to their plan, that really intense, attempted suicide pact after their grandfather dies.
Big turning point in the story. It changes everything. The pact fails, they get separated, Natsuki is forced back into the factory.
Back into the machine, and we're left wondering about you.
The story then jumps ahead to Natsuki as an adult. She's married, but it's kind of a unique marriage.
You're not your typical marriage.
It's a marriage of convenience to a man who, well, he feels the same way she does about intimacy and fitting in.
So they find a way to exist kind of on the fringes, right? Like minimizing their contact with the whole system.
Trying to create their own little bubble outside the factory, I guess you could say. But then everything changes when they end up back in Akishina.
Back in Akishina. And guess who they find there? And that reunion, it sets off this whole chain of events, leading them to, well, they decide to fully reject Earthling norms. They create their own identity, call themselves
Popinpobopia.
Popinpobopians.
Just like they've built their own world, their own rules.
And those rules?
Yeah.
Pretty different from what the factory dictates.
It's like their own little society outside the factory completely.
Status, possessions, all that means nothing.
Right. It's all about survival, existing outside the system.
But this peaceful little world they've built, it gets shattered.
Yeah. When those attackers show up.
And things take a really dark turn there.
Yeah.
Because it turns out these attackers, they're connected to Mr. Igasaki.
Natsuki's teacher, the abusive one.
Yeah. They're out for revenge.
Wow. So the past is coming back to haunt them.
Big time. And the way the trio responds to this attack, it's pretty intense, brutal.
They're fighting for their lives at this point.
Exactly. And it pushes them to do things that are hard to even comprehend.
Cannibalism?
Yeah. Cannibalism. And Murata, she doesn't shy away from it. It's like, it's almost presented as this matter-of-fact thing.
Like a necessity.
A necessity for survival in this crazy world they've created. But it really makes you think about what people are capable of when they're pushed to the absolute limit.
And their whole concept of morality, right? It's all twisted.
Because in the Popinpopian world, cannibalism, it might not be seen as wrong.
Wow. Yeah, like their whole moral compass is just
completely different. And then there's the betrayal. Kisi, Natsuki's sister.
Oh, right. She was involved somehow.
She gave those attackers information, evidence,
Right.
helped them find Natsuki.
Why would she do that?
That's the question, isn't it? Jealousy, anger, revenge for something that happened when they were kids?
Man, family ties are complicated.
Definitely complicated. And this whole situation, it just shows you conformity
Yeah.
doesn't equal happiness. It can breed some dark stuff, resentment, even violence.
Absolutely. So what happens next?
Well, just when things seem like they can't get any crazier,
It gets crazier.
a rescue party shows up with Natsuki's family.
Oh, wow.
They're horrified, obviously, by what they find. This whole Popinpobopian scene, the cannibalism, everything.
It's like stepping onto another planet.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And yet, despite this chance to be rescued, to go back to, normal society, the trio, they refuse.
They don't want to be rescued.
They want to stay in their Popinpobopian world. It's like they've gone too far. There's no going back.
So what happens is the books just end?
It ends on this incredibly ambiguous note. We don't know what becomes of them, of their world.
Murata really leaves you hanging.
She does. And that's part of what makes Earthlings so powerful, I think. It doesn't give you easy answers or neat resolutions. It forces you to sit with the discomfort, to grapple with these really dark, complex ideas. It's unsettling, right? Like thinking about how this factory metaphor, it even plays into the ending.
Yeah. How so?
Well, even as that rescue party arrives, there's this lingering scent of Earthling.
Right. I remember that detail.
It's like even though the trio's trying to create something different, something outside the factory.
They can't escape it completely.
Exactly. And that cycle of, violence, consumption, it's like it might not end with them.
It could even be passed on to the rescuers, in a way.
That's a chilling thought. Like maybe their Popinpobopian world, it's not really a solution. It's just another twisted version of the system.
Another layer of the factory. Just disguised.
Yeah. Makes you think about human nature, right? Like no matter how far you run,
Those darker impulses are still there.
the need for power, for control,
Yep.
it's always lurking. Even in people who think they're doing good.
And the rescue party. They're described as Earthlings, too, right? So that really blurs the line.
Big time. Are they really there to help? Or are they just another extension of the factory coming to impose their own kind of order?
Makes you wonder if true freedom is even possible in a world that's built on conformity.
Yeah. Like, is there any escaping it?
Maybe not escaping. Maybe it's more about changing it from within.
It's like Murata saying, like, there's no utopia waiting for us. No perfect society where everyone fits in and everyone's happy.
Because people are messy. We're all flawed. Capable of amazing things, but also capable of, well, terrible things.
Exactly. And the choices we make, the ways we choose to belong or rebel, that's what shapes the world.
That's what makes Earthlings so thought-provoking, right? It doesn't shy away from those hard questions. It makes you confront them.
Yeah. It's not a feel-good story. It's a story that stays with you, makes you think, and maybe even makes you a little uncomfortable.
In a good way, though, right? I mean, great art should challenge us, make us question our assumptions.
Absolutely. So if you're looking for a book that'll do that, Earthlings is definitely worth checking out. Just be prepared for a wild ride.
A wild and dark ride. And for those who've already read it, I hope this deep dive has given you some new things to think about, new ways to interpret this really complex story.
We could probably talk about Earthlings for hours.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So much to unpack. But for now, I guess we'll leave it there.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. It's been intense, but hopefully rewarding. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.